The massive ships appeared in Earth's sky like dark clouds blocking out the sun. They were huge, each one the size of a city. The metal hulls gleamed with strange patterns that seemed to move and shift when people looked at them. Inside the ships, the Zephyrian Empire's soldiers prepared for what they believed would be an easy victory. Commander Vextar stood on the bridge of the lead ship, his tall frame covered in gleaming armor that looked like liquid metal. His 6 eyes studied the blue planet below through the massive viewing screen. Behind him, dozens of his warriors worked at control panels that glowed with soft purple light. "Analysis complete, Commander," said his second-in-command, touching a glowing symbol on her arm panel. "The humans use primitive chemical weapons. No energy shields detected. No plasma technology. They appear to be stuck in an early industrial phase." Vextar's mouth opened in what humans might recognize as a smile, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Excellent. This will be over quickly. What about their military capabilities?" The screen filled with images captured from human military transmissions. Soldiers carrying metal tubes, vehicles with rotating barrels, and aircraft that moved without any visible energy propulsion. "They call their main infantry weapons rifles," the officer continued. "These devices use small metal projectiles pushed by chemical explosions. Range appears limited to a few hundred of their distance units." Other Zephyrian soldiers gathered around, looking at the images with amusement. Their own weapons could destroy targets from orbit. Their armor could stop meteor impacts. The idea of using tiny metal pieces thrown by chemical reactions seemed like something from their ancient history books. "Commander," another officer called out, "we're intercepting more communications. They're organizing what they call sniper teams." "Snipers?" Vextar repeated the unfamiliar word. "Yes, sir. From what we can understand, these are soldiers who use longer versions of their projectile weapons. They hide at great distances and fire single shots at targets." The bridge erupted in laughter. Even the normally serious communications officers couldn't help but find humor in the concept. Vextar wiped moisture from his eyes with a clawed hand. "They think they can threaten us with individual shots from primitive launchers?" he said. "Our armor is rated to withstand direct hits from stellar debris. A small piece of metal moving at chemical speeds couldn't even scratch the paint." The tactical display showed Earth's major military installations. Most were clustered around large population centers, making them easy targets. The humans had no orbital defenses, no energy barriers protecting their cities. It would be like fighting children with sticks. "Sir, should we begin the assault?" asked the weapons officer. Vextar held up a clawed hand. "Not yet. I want to study these snipers more carefully. This could be entertaining." He activated the ship's advanced scanning system. Across Earth, the invisible beams swept over military bases, recording everything. The data that came back only increased the aliens' amusement. The human weapons were indeed chemical-based, using explosive powder to launch small metal projectiles. The longest-range versions could barely reach 2,000 meters effectively. Compared to Zephyrian weapons that could strike targets on different continents, it was laughably short. "Look at this," called out the intelligence officer, highlighting new data on the main screen. "They have soldiers who spend years training just to hit targets accurately with these devices. They even have competitions to see who can hit the smallest targets from the furthest distances." "Fascinating," Vextar mused. "They've turned their weapons limitations into some kind of sport." The screen showed human snipers in training, lying motionless for hours, calculating wind speed and distance. They made tiny adjustments to their primitive scopes, accounting for factors that advanced Zephyrian computers handled automatically. "They have to manually calculate every shot," observed the science officer. "No computer assistance, no energy guidance systems. They rely entirely on individual skill and basic mathematics." "How inefficient," Vextar said, shaking his head. "Our basic infantry weapons can lock onto targets automatically and adjust for all environmental factors in microseconds." He walked to the center of the bridge, his armor's internal systems maintaining perfect temperature and pressure while monitoring his health. The idea that humans had to lie in dirt and cold, manually controlling their breathing to fire accurately, seemed primitive beyond comprehension. "Sir, the communications officer interrupted. "We're receiving a transmission from Earth's military command. They're asking for our intentions, and whether we come in peace." "Ignore them," Vextar replied. "But continue monitoring their sniper deployments. I want to know where they position their best marksmen." The scanning data revealed human sniper teams moving to high ground around major cities. They carried weapons that looked like enlarged versions of basic rifles, along with various optical devices and measuring tools. Some teams included additional soldiers who seemed to exist only to help the sniper calculate shots. "They need assistance just to aim properly," laughed one of the junior officers. "Our weapons can fire accurately while the user is running at full speed." Vextar studied the tactical readouts more carefully. The humans were positioning their sniper teams at ranges where they clearly couldn't penetrate Zephyrian armor, but the placement showed some strategic thinking. They were covering approach routes and important installations. "At least they understand basic defensive positioning," he admitted. "Though it won't help them." The ship's armorer approached, carrying a piece of Zephyrian battle armor. "Commander, would you like a demonstration of our protection capabilities?" Vextar nodded. The armorer placed the armor piece on a testing stand and activated a simulation program. The screen showed various Earth weapons being fired at the armor. Rifles, machine guns, even their largest artillery pieces. In every case, the projectiles bounced off harmlessly or disintegrated on impact. "The armor can withstand direct hits from objects moving 10 times faster than their fastest projectiles," the armorer explained. "It would take sustained fire from hundreds of their weapons to even create a scratch." "Excellent," Vextar said, satisfied. "Begin landing operations. Deploy advanced scouts to each major population center. I want the humans to see how useless their weapons are against us." As the first Zephyrian dropships launched toward Earth's surface, the commander felt confident about the coming conquest. The humans might be brave, and their defensive planning showed some intelligence. But courage and tactics meant nothing against overwhelming technological superiority. He had no idea that somewhere on Earth, a woman named Elena Rodriguez was cleaning her rifle and studying satellite images of alien ships, calculating distances and wind patterns with the patience of someone who had spent her entire adult life perfecting the art of impossible shots. The first battle took place outside Denver, Colorado, as the sun rose over the Rocky Mountains. Captain James Miller watched through his binoculars as 3 Zephyrian dropships landed in the valley below his position. The ships were sleek and beautiful, like giant teardrops made of silver and purple metal. "All units, hold fire until they're in range," Miller whispered into his radio. He had 22 soldiers with him, including 2 sniper teams positioned on the ridgeline. They had spent hours preparing this ambush. But now, seeing the aliens up close, he wondered if they had made a terrible mistake. The dropship doors opened with a soft hissing sound. The Zephyrian soldiers that emerged looked like walking statues made of liquid metal. Their armor reflected the morning sunlight in strange patterns. Each warrior carried a weapon that glowed with internal energy, and they moved with the confidence of beings who had never faced a real threat. "Jesus," whispered Sergeant Anderson, lying flat beside Miller. "Look at the size of them." The aliens stood nearly 8 feet tall in their armor. They spread out in a perfect formation, scanning the area with sensors that swept back and forth like glowing eyes. Their movements were smooth and coordinated, like a well-rehearsed dance. "Range, 1,500 meters, reported Corporal Hayes from the sniper position. "I have a clean shot on the leader." Miller hesitated. The plan had been to wait until the aliens were closer. But something about their casual attitude made him angry. They were treating Earth like it was already conquered. "Take the shot," he ordered. The rifle crack echoed across the valley. Miller watched through his binoculars as the .50 caliber bullet struck the alien leader's center mass. There was a bright flash where the round hit, and then nothing. The alien didn't even stumble. Instead, it turned toward the sound and raised what looked like a greeting gesture. "What the hell?" Hayes muttered over the radio. The alien leader's weapon began to glow brighter. A beam of purple light shot out, striking the rock formation where Hayes was hidden. The entire outcropping exploded in a shower of molten stone, Hayes's radio went silent. "Fall back," Miller shouted, but it was too late. The aliens advanced up the slope with impossible speed. Their weapons fired continuously, turning trees into ash and melting the ground itself. Miller's soldiers returned fire with everything they had: rifles, machine guns, even a rocket launcher. The bullets and shells struck the aliens but bounced off their armor like raindrops. Within 10 minutes, Miller's entire unit was dead or dying. He lay behind a fallen log, bleeding from shrapnel wounds, watching as the aliens walked among the bodies of his soldiers. They seemed curious rather than angry, examining human weapons like scientists studying primitive tools. One alien picked up Hayes's sniper rifle, turning it over in its massive hands. It made a sound that Miller somehow understood was laughter. 3 days later, every television and radio on Earth carried the same broadcast. Commander Vex Tar appeared on screens worldwide, his alien features somehow managing to convey smugness and amusement. "Humans of Earth," he said in perfect English, his voice translated by technology beyond human understanding. "We have examined your military capabilities and find them quaint." The broadcast showed footage from the Denver battle and dozens of others like it. In every case, human weapons failed to even scratch the alien armor, while Zephyrian weapons destroyed everything they touched. "We are particularly amused by your sniper soldiers," Vextar continued. "These warriors who pride themselves on precision shooting with primitive chemical launchers. We have analyzed your best shots, and we calculate that your strongest weapons firing your hardest projectiles could not penetrate our basic field uniforms, much less our battle armor." The screen showed a Zephyrian soldier standing motionless, while human bullets bounced off his chest like pebbles. The alien wasn't even wearing full armor, just a simple uniform that shimmered like oil on water. "Your sniper rifles, which you consider the pinnacle of long-range warfare, are less effective than the training weapons we give to our youngest soldiers," Vextar said. "We have weapons that can strike targets on other continents with perfect accuracy. Your best marksmen struggle to hit targets at distances we consider close range." In military bunkers around the world, human commanders watched the broadcast with growing despair. The aliens were right. Every engagement had proven the complete futility of human weapons against Zephyrian technology. But Vextar wasn't finished humiliating them. "Since your snipers seem to be objects of particular pride for your species, I offer a challenge," he said, his image leaning forward on the screen. "I will stand motionless for one of your time units called an hour. Any sniper, anywhere on your planet, may take their best shot at me. If they can penetrate my armor, or even cause me to step backward from the impact, we will consider negotiating terms for your surrender." The camera pulled back to show Vextar standing on a hill outside Las Vegas. He wore his full battle armor, all 8 feet of gleaming metal and energy fields. His arms were spread wide in a gesture of complete contempt. "I will not move," he promised. "I will not activate additional defenses. Any human marksman brave enough or foolish enough may try to scratch me with their primitive projectile launchers." The broadcast continued, showing the alien commander standing motionless as the sun moved across the sky. Human news crews gathered at safe distances, filming the surreal scene. In military command centers, generals argued about whether to take the challenge seriously or ignore it completely. "It's obviously a trap," said General Patterson at NORAD. "He wants us to reveal our sniper positions." "What positions?" replied General Morrison bitterly. "We've lost half our long-range specialists already. The ones left are hiding because conventional weapons don't work." As the hours passed, Vextar remained standing on the hill. Occasionally, he would check a device on his wrist or look directly at the news cameras with obvious amusement. His casual attitude made it clear that he considered the challenge completely safe. Around the world, human sniper teams watched the broadcast with a mixture of rage and despair. They had dedicated their lives to the precision shooting arts, spending years perfecting their skills, only to discover that their expertise was useless against alien technology. But in a small house outside Austin, Texas, Master Sergeant Elena Rodriguez sat at her kitchen table, studying the alien commander through a telescope she had set up by her window. She had been one of the Army's top snipers before retiring to compete in civilian shooting matches. Her basement workshop contained tools and equipment that would make professional gunsmiths jealous. "Stand still all you want," she whispered, making notes about wind speed and distance calculations. Everyone has a weak point. She had been studying footage of alien armor for days, frame by frame, looking for something everyone else had missed. And slowly, very slowly, she was beginning to see possibilities that others had overlooked. The hour passed. Vextar finally moved, waving at the cameras before walking back to his ship. No human sniper had taken the shot. The message was clear. Earth's most skilled marksmen weren't even willing to try anymore. But Elena Rodriguez was already driving toward Nevada, her custom rifle secured in the back of her truck. Along with ammunition, she had been preparing for a very special shot. Elena Rodriguez crawled the last 50 meters to her shooting position on her belly, moving slowly to avoid disturbing the desert sand. The Nevada sun burned overhead, but she had trained in worse conditions. Behind her, hidden in a dry wash, lay her truck and enough survival gear to last a week if necessary. She had driven for 18 hours straight to reach this place. A rocky outcrop exactly 2,847 meters from where the alien commander liked to give his daily broadcasts. The distance was beyond what most people considered possible for accurate shooting, but Elena had been making impossible shots since she was 12 years old. Her rifle was a custom-built, 50 BMG, based on the classic Barrett design but modified with parts she had machined herself. The barrel was longer than standard, hand-lapped for perfect accuracy. The scope was a Schmidt & Bender that cost more than most people's cars, mounted on rings she had made to her exact specifications. Most importantly, the ammunition was her own creation. Each bullet had been crafted individually in her workshop, using tungsten cores surrounded by hardened steel jackets. The powder charge was measured to the 1/10 of a grain. These weren't standard military rounds designed for mass production. They were precision instruments designed for one specific purpose. Elena set up her shooting position with practiced efficiency. The bipod legs were adjusted to account for the slight slope. A small weather station measured wind speed, humidity, and temperature. A ballistic computer ran calculations based on GPS coordinates and atmospheric pressure. Through her scope, she watched the alien commander emerge from his ship for his morning routine. Vextar had taken to appearing daily, standing in the open for exactly 1 hour while broadcasting taunts to human forces worldwide. He rotated through different locations, but always chose high ground where he could be seen clearly. Today he was on a mesa about 2 miles away, well beyond the range where any human sniper had successfully engaged targets in combat. The alien's armor gleamed in the morning sun, the surface seeming to shift and flow like liquid metal. Elena studied him through her scope with the patience of a professional hunter. Most people saw the armor as a solid shell, but she had spent days analyzing video footage from different angles and lighting conditions. She had noticed something that everyone else had missed. The armor wasn't perfectly smooth. There were joints where different sections met, places where the living metal had to flex and move to allow the wearer to walk and gesture. These joints were microscopic, invisible to the naked eye, but they were there, and joints meant weak points. She focused on the area where Vextar's helmet connected to his chest armor, just below what would be the throat on a human. In her scope, at maximum magnification, she could see a hairline seam where the two armor sections met. It was less than a millimeter wide, barely visible even with her high-powered optics. But Elena had made shots through gaps smaller than that. She checked her calculations one more time. Range: 2,847 meters. Wind speed: 7.3 miles per hour from the northwest. Temperature: 89 degrees Fahrenheit. Humidity: 12%. Atmospheric pressure: 30.2 inches. Her ballistic computer suggested a drop of 31.2 MOA and a windage adjustment of 2.1 MOA left. Elena made the scope adjustments with practiced precision, then double-checked everything manually using the slide rule calculator she always carried. Computers were useful, but Elena trusted her own brain more than any machine. She settled into her shooting position, controlling her breathing the way her grandfather had taught her when she was learning to hunt deer in the Texas hill country. Inhale, exhale, inhale, Hold. Let the rifle become an extension of her body. Feel the earth beneath her, solid and still. Through the scope, Vextar was giving another speech about human inadequacy. His head was tilted slightly upward, addressing the cameras floating around him. The angle was perfect, exposing the joint she needed to hit. Elena's finger found the trigger, applying exactly 3.2 pounds of pressure to the first stage. The rifle was perfectly still, the crosshairs centered on a target so small it would be invisible to most people at this distance. She thought about Captain Miller and his unit, wiped out in Colorado. She thought about the hundreds of human soldiers who had died trying to fight enemies their weapons couldn't touch. She thought about the children hiding in basements around the world, wondering if tomorrow would come. And she thought about what her grandfather had told her the first time she had made a perfect shot at extreme range. Elena, there's always a way. You just have to see what others miss. The wind dropped to almost nothing. The crosshairs held steady on the tiny seam in the alien armor. Elena exhaled halfway and held her breath. She pressed the trigger. The rifle bucked against her shoulder with familiar force. The tungsten core bullet left the muzzle at 2,850 feet per second, beginning its long arc across the desert. For 3.2 seconds, it flew through the air, dropping and drifting according to the immutable laws of physics. At that distance, even sound took 8 seconds to travel. Elena watched through her scope as Vextar continued his speech, unaware that death was already in the air. The bullet struck the armor joint with surgical precision. The living metal that had turned aside artillery shells and shrugged off rocket explosions couldn't compress fast enough to seal a gap that was already there. The tungsten core, harder than any natural substance on Earth, punched through the seam like a needle through cloth. Vextar stopped speaking mid-sentence. He looked down at his chest, where purple fluid was beginning to leak from the tiny hole in his armor. His expression changed from arrogant confidence to shock, then to something that might have been fear. He took a step backward. The alien commander, who had bragged that human weapons couldn't make him even step back, stumbled and fell to his knees on the desert mesa. Elena watched through her scope as chaos erupted around the wounded alien. Other Zephyrian soldiers rushed to their commander, while their flying cameras scattered in panic. The smooth, coordinated movements of the aliens became frantic and disorganized. She worked the bolt of her rifle, chambering another round. But the aliens were already retreating. Energy shields that hadn't been needed before suddenly sprang to life around every warrior. They moved like soldiers who had just discovered they were mortal after all. Elena spoke into the radio she had tuned to military emergency frequencies. This is Master Sergeant Elena Rodriguez to any military unit receiving. The alien commander has been neutralized. Repeat. Target has been hit and is down. The armor can be penetrated. She paused, watching as alien medical teams worked frantically over their fallen leader. Range was 2,847 meters. Used a 50 BMG with tungsten core ammunition. Target was the joint seam between helmet and chest armor. The gap is less than 1 millimeter, but it's there if you know how to look for it. Across the world, human snipers who had been hiding in shame suddenly sat up straighter. The impossible had just become possible. Elena began packing her gear with the same careful precision she had used to set it up. Her work here was done, but she had a feeling that Master Sergeant Elena Rodriguez was about to become very busy indeed. The war wasn't over, but for the first time since the aliens arrived, humanity had just proven that even gods could bleed. The news of Commander Vextar's wounding spread through the Zephyrian forces faster than their fastest communication systems. Within hours, every alien soldier on Earth knew that their supposedly invincible armor had been breached by a single human with a primitive chemical launcher. Sub-Commander Kethnal stood in the medical bay of the primary assault ship, watching as their best healers worked to save Vextar's life. The tiny hole in the commander's chest was smaller than a human finger, but it had penetrated completely through his body. Purple blood pooled on the medical table despite their advanced healing technology. "How is this possible?" Kethnal demanded from the chief medical officer. "Our armor is rated against stellar debris, moving at relativistic speeds. The projectile didn't impact with sufficient force to trigger the armor's compression response," the medic explained, his multiple arms working frantically over scanning equipment. It was small and fast enough to pass through a joint seam before the living metal could react. Kethnal stared at the hole in the armor. In 200 years of conquest across 17 different worlds, no enemy had ever found such a weakness. The Zephyrian Empire's military doctrine was built around the absolute protection their armor provided. "Sir," called a communications officer from the bridge. "We're receiving reports from all ground units. They're requesting permission to activate full defensive shields." "Granted," Kethnal replied immediately. "All personnel are to maintain maximum protection protocols until further notice." But even as he gave the order, he knew it was too late. The humans had learned something that couldn't be unlearned. Staff Sergeant Michael Chen lay motionless in a pile of rubble that had once been a shopping mall in downtown Seattle. He had been hidden there for 3 days, watching the alien patrol routes and studying their movements. His rifle was a standard M24. Nothing special compared to the weapon that had wounded the alien commander. But Chen had been the Pacific Northwest regional shooting champion 5 years running. Through his scope, he watched a Zephyrian patrol moving down the street below. Yesterday, these aliens had walked with casual confidence. Today, they moved like soldiers, expecting to be shot at any moment. Their energy shields flickered constantly around them, and they kept looking up at windows and rooftops. Chen focused on the patrol leader, a tall alien wearing slightly more elaborate armor than the others. He studied the way the armor sections moved when the alien walked, looking for the joints that Elena Rodriguez had identified. There, at the waist, were the torso armor connected to the leg sections. When the alien took long steps, a microscopic gap appeared for just a fraction of a second. Chen waited, counting the alien's steps, timing the pattern. 3 long strides, 2 short ones, then a pause to scan the area. On the 4th repetition, he was ready. The rifle cracked. The alien spun and fell, purple fluid spreading across the concrete. The rest of the patrol immediately activated full energy shields and began firing wildly at every building in sight. But Chen was already moving, crawling through the rubble toward his secondary position 2 blocks away. He keyed his radio to the frequency that human snipers were using to coordinate across the city. "This is Chen. Confirmed kill on patrol leader at 3rd and Pine. Joint hit at the waist armor. Moving to position 7. Similar reports were coming in from around the world. In London, Corporal Davies had taken down an alien officer by hitting the joint where the arm connected to the shoulder. In Tokyo, Sergeant Yamamoto had found a weak point at the ankle where the foot armor flexed. In Cairo, a former Olympic shooting competitor named Hassan had threaded a bullet through the optical sensor of an alien's helmet. Each successful shot was immediately reported to other sniper teams, building a database of vulnerabilities that grew by the hour. The alien's armor had dozens of joints, and human marksmen were finding every one of them. Within 24 hours of Vextar's wounding, Zephyrian ground operations had ground to a halt. Alien soldiers who had strutted through human cities like invincible gods now moved in small groups, staying close to buildings and vehicles for cover. Their energy shields remained constantly active, draining power reserves that had been designed to last for weeks. Sub-Commander Kethnal received the casualty reports with growing disbelief. 23 officers down in the first day. 47 soldiers wounded or killed in the second day. Not from massive human counterattacks or new weapons, but from individual shooters scattered across the planet, firing single shots from impossible distances. "How far was the longest confirmed kill?" he asked his intelligence officer. 3,400 meters, sir. A human sniper in Australia hit Lieutenant Vexmar through the helmet joint. The shooter was positioned on a mountain overlooking the target area. Kethnal studied the tactical displays showing Zephyrian positions across Earth. Red dots marked every sniper attack. They were everywhere. Cities, countryside, mountains, deserts. The humans seemed to have marksmen hidden in every shadow. "Sir," reported the communications officer, "our ground forces are requesting permission to withdraw to fortified positions." "Denied," Kethnal replied automatically, then reconsidered. "Actually, Ofrand 2000. Relay a new order. All ground operations are to be conducted from vehicles only. No soldier is to be exposed in the open for more than 30 seconds at a time. But even that wasn't enough. The humans adapted faster than seemed possible. When aliens stayed in vehicles, snipers targeted the optical sensors and weapon systems. When they moved only at night, human thermal scopes found them anyway. When they tried to use aerial cover, marksmen appeared on tall buildings and mountain peaks. The most disturbing reports came from the intelligence analysis teams. The human snipers weren't just lucky amateurs. They were calculating wind speed, atmospheric pressure, and planetary rotation to make shots that Zephyrian computers said were mathematically impossible for organic beings using chemical weapons. "Sir," the science officer reported, "we've analyzed the trajectory data from the long-range kills. These humans are compensating for factors that our own targeting systems consider negligible at those distances." Explain. The humans account for the rotation of their planet when making extreme-range shots. They calculate how far the target will move during the bullet's flight time due to planetary motion. Our soldiers don't move fast enough for this to matter in normal combat. But at ranges exceeding 2,000 meters, the effect becomes significant. Kethnal felt something he had never experienced before in military service: doubt. "Are you telling me that these primitive beings are better at calculating ballistic trajectories than our computer systems?" "For these specific conditions, yes, sir. Our targeting computers are designed for energy weapons that travel at light speed. We never considered the complexities of slow-moving projectiles at extreme range." The truth was becoming impossible to ignore. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered worlds by overwhelming technological superiority, but they had never faced an enemy that turned their weaknesses into advantages. Human weapons were slow, short-ranged, and required manual operation. But human soldiers had spent generations perfecting the use of those limitations. A new report arrived from the surface. Captain Yarseth's entire squad had been eliminated by a single sniper in the mountains of Afghanistan. The human had fired 5 shots over the course of 3 hours, hitting 5 different joint points with perfect accuracy. By the time Zephyrian forces reached the shooting position, they found only empty shell casings and footprints leading deeper into the mountains. "Sir," the tactical officer said quietly, "the humans are calling it asymmetric warfare. We have superior technology, but they have superior knowledge of how to exploit specific weaknesses under specific conditions." Kethnal looked at the reports piling up on his command console. Each one described alien soldiers being picked off by invisible enemies who struck without warning and vanished without trace. The humans hadn't tried to match Zephyrian technology. Instead, they had turned their primitive weapons into precision instruments of surgical warfare. "Recall all ground forces to defensive positions," he finally ordered. "Institute new protocols. No soldier goes anywhere alone. Travel only in groups with overlapping shield coverage. Avoid all elevated positions and open areas." As his officers rushed to implement the new orders, Kethnal realized with growing dread that the Zephyrian Empire had just been forced into a defensive posture by an enemy they had initially dismissed as harmlessly primitive. The humans weren't trying to fight fair. They were hunting aliens like animals, one precise shot at a time. Commander Vextar awakened in the medical bay to the sound of alarms echoing throughout the ship. His chest ached where the human projectile had torn through his body, but the medical nanites had sealed the wound. He was alive, barely, but the psychological damage ran much deeper than the physical injury. "Report," he croaked to the medical attendant, hovering nearby. "Sir, you should rest," the healers say. "Report." Vextar struggled to sit up, ignoring the pain. Through the medical bay's viewport, he could see Earth below. The blue planet that had seemed so helpless just days ago. Sub-Commander Kethnal entered the medical bay, his armor bearing fresh scorch marks. "Commander, you're awake. We weren't sure." Quote, "What's our situation?" Vextar demanded. Kethnal's expression was grim. "We've lost 47% of our ground forces. All remaining personnel have been pulled back to fortified positions, but the humans continue to find ways to reach us." The commander's heart sank. "Show me the tactical displays." The holographic map that appeared showed a nightmare scenario. Zephyrian positions were marked in blue, but they were surrounded by red indicators representing confirmed human sniper positions. The red dots seemed to be everywhere. In buildings, on mountainsides, hidden in forests. even in sewers beneath cities. They're hunting us, Kethnal continued. Individual humans with primitive weapons are systematically eliminating our forces. Our soldiers are afraid to step outside protective barriers. Vextar studied the reports, scrolling past on the medical bay's displays. Each entry described another impossible shot. Another Zephyrian warrior brought down by a human marksman, operating alone at extreme range. The distances were staggering. 3,000 meters, 3,500 meters. Some confirmed kills at nearly 4,000 meters. How are they making these shots? He asked. We've analyzed their methods, Kethnal replied. The humans have turned shooting into a science. They account for air pressure, humidity, wind patterns, even the magnetic field of their planet. They know their weapons' limitations so completely that they've learned to work around them. A new alarm sounded. Through the viewport, Vextar could see one of their orbital defense platforms exploding in a shower of debris. What happened to Station 7? Human aircraft approached under cover of a radiation storm. Our sensors couldn't track them accurately. They destroyed the station's main weapons array with guided missiles. Vextar felt a chill run through his body that had nothing to do with his injuries. They're adapting faster than our tactical computers can predict. Yes, sir. Every time we implement new defensive measures, they find ways around them within hours. When we started using energy shields constantly, they began targeting our power generators. When we moved to covered positions, they found elevated shooting angles we hadn't considered. When we began traveling only in groups, they started coordinating multiple snipers for simultaneous attacks. The tactical display updated again. More red dots appeared as human sniper teams revealed new positions. Some were impossibly far from any Zephyrian installations, meaning the humans were making shots at ranges that Zephyrian doctrine said were impossible with chemical weapons. Sir, reported a communications officer, we're receiving an encrypted message from the human who shot you. She's identified herself as Master Sergeant Elena Rodriguez. What does she want? She's offering to discuss terms for our withdrawal from Earth. Vextar laughed bitterly. A single human soldier with a primitive weapon was offering to negotiate with the representative of a galactic empire. The absurdity would have been funny if it weren't so terrifying. Put her through. Elena Rodriguez's face appeared on the main screen. She looked exactly like what she was. A middle-aged human female, with graying hair and weathered skin. Nothing about her suggested she was anything more than an ordinary member of her species. But Vextar now knew that ordinary humans were far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. Commander Vextar, she said in accented English, I'm glad to see you survived. That wasn't the intention. You missed? Vextar asked, genuinely curious. No, Rodriguez replied calmly. If I had wanted to kill you, you'd be dead. I aimed for a non-fatal wound to prove a point. The casual confidence in her voice sent another chill through Vextar's body. This human had made a shot that should have been impossible. And she claimed she could have made it even more precise if she had wanted to. What do you want? I want you to leave our planet, Rodriguez said simply. You came here thinking we were primitives who couldn't threaten you. You were wrong. We've killed or wounded over half your ground forces using weapons you consider obsolete. How many more of your people need to die before you admit this was a mistake? Vextar looked at the tactical displays showing the desperate situation of his remaining forces. Human snipers had them pinned down in defensive positions, unable to advance or even move safely. Supply drops were being targeted before they could reach the surface. Communication relays were being destroyed by impossibly accurate long-range fire. Your weapons are still primitive, he said. But the words sounded hollow even to him. Maybe, Rodriguez agreed. But we've had centuries to perfect our use of them. You have energy weapons and powered armor, but your soldiers don't know how to fight an enemy they can't see. They don't know how to move under observation by someone who can put a bullet through a gap smaller than a coin from 3 miles away. She was right, and Vextar knew it. Zephyrian military doctrine was based on technological superiority and direct confrontation. They had never faced an enemy that avoided direct combat in favor of surgical strikes from impossible distances. What are your terms? He asked. Simple. Leave Earth. Don't come back. If you do, We'll be waiting. And if we refuse? Rodriguez's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes made Vex Tar's blood freeze. Commander, I've been studying your people for days. I know where your vital organs are located. I know which joints in your armor are most vulnerable, and I'm just one person. There are thousands of snipers on this planet, and we're sharing everything we learn about how to kill your kind. She paused, letting that sink in. Right now, your soldiers are hiding behind energy barriers and staying in armored vehicles because they're afraid of being shot. How long before your troops refuse to leave their ships at all? How long before morale breaks completely? Through the ship's sensors, Vex Tar could see his remaining ground forces huddled in defensive positions, afraid to move. These were elite warriors who had conquered 17 worlds, reduced to cowering behind barriers by humans with chemical projectile weapons. We could bombard your planet from orbit, he said weakly. Yes. Rodriguez agreed. You could kill all of us. But then you'd rule over a dead world. Is that what your empire wants? A planet full of ash? Vex Tar realized she was right again. The Zephyrian Empire conquered worlds to exploit their resources and populations. A devastated planet would be worthless. I need to consult with my superiors, he said finally. You have 12 hours, Rodriguez replied. After that, we start hunting your people more aggressively. The communication ended. Vex Tar sat in the medical bay, staring at the image of Earth below. A beautiful blue world that had become a death trap for his forces. He activated the long-range communication system and waited for the connection to reach the Imperial homeworld, light years away. When the Emperor's image finally appeared on the screen, Vex Tar chose his words carefully. Your Majesty, I must report that the conquest of Earth has failed. I recommend immediate withdrawal of all forces. Explain. The humans possess a military capability we did not anticipate. They have perfected the use of primitive kinetic weapons to a degree that makes them effective against our technology. Our casualties are unacceptable, and our remaining forces are unable to operate effectively. The Emperor's expression was skeptical. You're telling me that primitives with chemical launchers have defeated the Imperial fleet? Yes, Your Majesty. These humans don't fight like any enemy we've encountered. They avoid direct confrontation, and instead use precision strikes to eliminate our forces one soldier at a time. They can hit targets accurately at ranges our doctrine considers impossible for kinetic weapons. Vex Tar paused, then added the most important part. Your Majesty. The humans have turned their technological inferiority into a tactical advantage. Their weapons are slow and primitive, but they know exactly how to use them. They understand precision and patience in ways we never learned. They strike like ghosts and vanish before we can respond. What do you recommend? Mark this system as unconquerable and never return. The humans are not primitives. They are specialists in a form of warfare we don't understand. They've proven that advanced technology means nothing if your enemy knows exactly where to place a simple bullet. The communication delay stretched for long moments before the Emperor replied. Withdraw all forces immediately. Mark the Sol system as quarantined. No Imperial ship is to approach that planet again. As the evacuation ships prepared to depart Earth, Vex Tar stood at the viewport, watching the blue planet recede into the distance. Somewhere down there, Elena Rodriguez and thousands of humans like her were probably watching through telescopes and rifle scopes, making sure the aliens really left. He had come to Earth expecting to conquer primitives with sticks and stones. Instead, he had discovered a species that had turned their limitations into strengths and their weaknesses into weapons. The Zephyrian Empire would find other worlds to conquer. But Earth would remain free, protected by the most dangerous force in the galaxy. Humans, who had perfected the art of the impossible shot.